All right, so today we'll be conducting an interview and walking around with the owner of Chesapeake Bay Distillery, Chris Richeson, the makers of the outstanding spirits of Blue Ridge Vodka and Beach Rum.
Yes, sir.
So now he's going to just explain his operation. After that, we're going to follow with some questions. So,
all right. Now, would you like me to start off with the Blue Ridge Vodka with the corn?
Yes,
or
sir.
with the Chesapeake Vodka or rum with the molasses?
We'll start off with the vodka. So.
Okay. All right. With the vodka, we use base of corn. There's a couple things about corn that are unique. It's starch, so you have to convert that to a sugar for the yeast to turn it into an alcohol. You also have a hint of sweetness from the corn. Just think, biting an ear of corn.
Right.
There's the sweetness there
that
you're not going to find in a wheat or a rye vodka. Then also, the bad part about corn is it's a rough product out of the still. It's pretty hard to make smooth. So when we get into the process later, we'll talk about how we do smooth it out. All right. We'll start over here with the corn. You've got to boil it off to get any impurities. You want to get any bacteria or wild yeast killed, so that you can have a controlled fermentation. After that's done, we'll put it into a fermenting tank, and at that point we'll add in, once the temperature is lowered under 100, we'll add in a glucoamylase. Now what that does, instead of malting, that wouldn't be gluten-free, we'll use the glucoamylase, which is an enzyme which will break down those starches into sugars. It's a fantastic product. The enzyme works extremely efficiently. If you put a dough ball on a table and added the glucoamylase, you come back the next day at the right temperature, and it's all liquefied.
Nice.
And what's happened is those starch chains have been broken down into sugar.
Nice.
At that point, you're ready for fermentation. We use just a basic distiller's yeast. Nothing too fancy about that one. We just want clean at that point. It's about a day of aerobic growth where the yeast multiplies. At that point, we'll shut the air off, the oxygen, and it goes into an anaerobic stage where you're basically creating alcohol at that point. Different batches are going to get to different levels of alcohol. We shoot for around 10%. At that point, we're basically ready to boil it off and distill it. That takes us about 2.5 runs to get it right. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of the second distillation trying to remove any of the congeners, the fusels, to get the product super clean. Especially with the vodka, our number one goal through this beginning process is to make a super clean product, and all the way through. Once we've done that, we usually let it rest. It prefers to rest for a couple of weeks. At that point, you're ready to do the filtration and or adding the water. Okay, we've used about 100 different methods in 100 different batches of filtration. It's quite a unique challenge. We use a basic carbon. It's actually pharmaceutical grade, and we have to treat that quite a bit before we can use it in the process. The whole goal is to get it super clean. There are some issues that you get in there with pH balancing, getting that to your level, and that's one thing that as I think we've slightly altered as we've gotten a little better and wiser in our field from batch one. But we try to keep it fairly neutral as opposed to getting too acidic or caustic. At that point, we're basically, the filtration process actually takes a few days for us, depending on the batch size, and it's a slow filter and usually fairly cold. At that point, we're ready to bottle it up. with bottling, one of the unique challenges with vodka is that we're at 0 parts per million of total dissolved solids. It's super clean at that point. What happens is we've got a mix tank that we use for the adding the water to rectify it and for bottling. Now, if you think of the mix tank, it actually becomes a centrifuge and separates out the different gradients of vodka. So, and there's actually one spot in that tank which becomes a dead spot, which if you don't correct for it, you're going to have bad bottles coming out of that one thing.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
You think it's mixed up, you think you're fine. It's not.
Wow.
Now, when you have more flavorful products, where your tongue can taste down to a few parts per million, and when you have more flavorful products, you don't have that issue as much because there's so much going on.
Okay.
But when you get it that clean, it becomes an issue. So what we do is we actually turn the mix tank into a reactor, but we're jetting the, and you can see the setup here. We're actually jetting the product back in while we're mixing it in a counter-rotating process.
Gotcha.
It's basically a vodka hot tub.
Gotcha.
At 60 degrees.
Right.
That's
crazy.
Yeah, everything's antiseptic, or super clean at that point.
Right.
We get it in the bottles, we put a sticker on it, we're ready to go to
Voila.
market.
Yeah, it's a beautiful bottle. I love the design.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Getting to market, that's when the real challenge is.
Right.
We've done the bottling 100 times. We're getting pretty daggone good at it.
Right.
This challenge is starting out. You've got to develop your flavor profile. We got a gold medal on one of our first batches.
Nice.
Never decided to go back for another one, but I think we've gotten a lot better even since then. The biggest difference is I think our product's matured a little bit, but consistency. And that, as a craft distiller, a lot of guys will say consistency. We're batch, but we want to maintain consistency through the batches. We do not 110%, but we try to get pretty close. There are going to be some changes with even with the water, with the products going in, the raw materials, the corn.
Exactly.
You're going to have some variation.
Exactly.
But we try to balance that out as much as possible.
Ain't bad. Ain't bad at all.
That's the nickel tour.
So what about the rum?
The rum is basically it's a similar process.
Okay.
The rum, we start out with basically sugar and molasses. All right, we'll boil that off as well. We're trying to get rid of any wild yeast at that point. There's always bacteria. There's always stuff that's going to grow. Now, the problem that we have with the rum, we'll go through the same process. We can avoid the glucoamylase because we've already got the sugar. Right. So we do boil it, and then we'll start the fermentation. With the especially with the rum, you think of sulfur is a bad thing in a drink, and even if it's sulfur-free molasses, the actual boiling of the product will create sulfur compounds. So one of the keys with the rum is you've got to cool it quickly after you bring it to a boil before those sulfur compounds can form, which will eventually they'll eventually drop down into sulfur that you've got in your drink, and it will taste terrible. It will smell like a rotten egg. Right. And the insidious part about it is you taste it, everything's great, and then on your last sip of a watered down drink, that's when you can taste it. And then you're like, oh, nope, it's back to the drawing board. Right. A lot of the process is the same in the distillation side of it. What we're trying to do, there's two flavor components from the rum. There's the yeast or obviously the sugar and stuff. The yeast and bacterial growth. Now that's something that's pretty hard to control. When you think of rum, you think of a nose, a flavor, pungent, and not necessarily in a bad way. That is the antithesis of what we do with the vodka, being ultra clean. With the rum, we've got to let in contamination. We have to allow bacterial growth. Otherwise, we just made vodka.
Right.
And that's a tricky thing. And that one took me a long time to figure out.
Right.
Yeah.
Get it just right.
I'm still working on it. We stumble into it sometimes.
Gotcha.
But when we to get the right bacterial growth is the key. And that's a heck of a lot of that flavor component. Now with we also slightly age the rum after we've distilled it. What we'll do with the rum is we'll flash it through French oak barrels and American oak barrels, and that gives some complexity to the final product. The American oak is more of a whiskey taste. The French oak is actually old octagon barrels from Barbersville, which there's one over there. If you
I'll take a picture.
Yeah, that gives it, and I don't want to say like a wine flavor, but more of a complex nose. The difference between French oak and American oak: French oak is dried in a barn, while the American oak is basically saplings charred. And so you've got two totally different flavors. When in the right combination, it works out pretty well.
Nice.
Yes. And then obviously once we've done the flash aging, we'll basically water it down, which rectify, stick it in some bottles, and ready to go to market.
Nice. Do the same bathtub scenario?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier with the rum. It's not quite as demanding.
Exactly.
But we do the same process because we've got it set up for that.
Right.
Yeah, then the biggest problem is when you go from rum to vodka, you've got some serious cleaning to do.
Cleaning.
Lots of cleaning.
Right.
And there's really, you can't, when it comes with the vodka, if I clean the tank out with water, I just made the tank dirtier. Because we're that clean.
Wow.
But with the rum,
just watch it down.
those are down.
All right. That ain't bad. Overhead is probably a lot cheaper for the rum, I'm assuming.
Depending on the corn prices, I guess the government got a penchant for putting corn in cars, which jacked the price up quite a bit.
It's coming up, right? It's coming up.
It's gone. Unfortunately, with that, corn prices come down a little bit. Everybody and their brothers planted it.
Right.
Instead of soybean cotton, everybody around here plants corn now.
Corn, right. Demand is growing.
Yeah, that's one thing we want to work on as a company is using more local products.
Right, I see that.
We don't mill our corn here, so I can't. It makes it a little more difficult.
All right.
We're gonna work on that.
All right, good deal. So I have a few questions for you,
Yes,
too.
sir.
So thank you for the walkthrough. What made you get into this business?
Well, ever since I was 16, or before, I wanted to own a small manufacturing company.
Nice.
And honestly, at 16, I wasn't thinking alcohol.
You might have, but you wasn't thinking about making it.
Yeah. No comment. Right. I worked in industrial engineering and had some specific knowledge in distilling. And a great buddy of mine, family friend, worked for a small distillery in Oregon, and it just seemed to fit. I saw the opportunity. It was something I really, really enjoyed. Creating a product, taking an ear of corn or a bag of sugar and turning it into a product that you can see behind a bar in a restaurant or on a store shelf. For me, that's fulfilling.
Nice.
And doing it in a way which we're obsessed with clean, and I think that's what we bring to the marketplace.
That's a good deal. But why vodka and why rum?
Well, vodka coming out, it's on the mechanics of it, it's fastest to market. But in actuality, that's where my love started for it. It's making a super clean product. We use traditional methods, but we instead of open top fermentation tanks. We seal everything off, keep everything super clean and controlled. At 10 years ago and going to some of the different small distilleries, cleanliness is not their forte. Of course, the alcohol will kill any contamination.
Should kill, right?
But that said,
Taste.
Yeah, it does. We were at a still the other day, and I saw a forklift driving right by the fermentation tanks, and I just thought,
open fermentation plant. So
yeah.
So and I was reading some of your mission statements, and you alluded to the fact that you try to use local ingredients, local
Yes.
farmers. How does that? How do you come to that mindset?
Well, there's a couple things to it. You have more control when you can go out and see a product,
Right.
as opposed to it coming in a bag.
Right.
That's one thing we're trying to work more on. We a lot of the local corns that we've used in the past can get a little expensive, and trying to find the right combination there. But that's something as a company that we have to devote more time to. Obviously we were using that, the Shenandoah water, and some local corn. We want to get to 100%.
Copy. That ain't bad. And you said this part of the house, producing it is it's not the easy part, but it's not as hard as the marketing side. And currently, the main topic for my marketing class is producing a brand and getting out the advertisements, the whole gambit of the marketing aspect. How do you go about handling that part? Do you hire another firm to do it, or do you guys do it yourself?
We outsource a lot of it. Like for instance, the bottle design. The difference at a brain test level for me, making a product is when I say it's the easy part, there's a lot of art to it.
Right, it's what you do.
But there's an answer. I can scientifically test and come up with an answer the next day, or that as to if this works or does not work.
Right.
With marketing, we try to do the same thing, whether it's advertising in a local magazine, the bottle design. We can do surveys. We can look at our sales numbers in different markets, in different stores, and see where they go. For instance, we can do tastings on the ABC store premise. Then we go back after the tasting, and we'll track the sales for the next 6 months or so. We can see that, and for instance, when we do tastings in the Hampton Roads area, they're pretty successful. Nice. When we do tastings in other areas, they're successful, but not to the same degree. Now that kind of lends to the question, why? Is it more local here? Is the person doing the tastings better here? I don't have an answer. I can go with anecdotal evidence,
right?
But it's hard to run a marketing campaign on anecdotal evidence,
right?
Unfortunately, we're in a business that is driven by some of the greatest marketers in the world. And when you think of the Diageos, the large liquor manufacturers, they are liquor manufacturers, but they're really marketing organizations.
Right.
And for us, with limited resources, just mental resources, time, and capital, we have to devote so much of that resource to making a product that we can't do the marketing that they do. Like for instance, print ads. It's a lot cheaper to do it, or radio. It's a lot cheaper to do it when you're national.
Right.
Than the guy down the street.
Right.
So that is something that we strive to get better and better. And every day our brand is clean. It's local product. Well, I think, or one of our original taglines was gold medal products handcrafted locally.
Right.
That's a lot of it. Making those to me, that gold medal is clean. We could say clean gold medal products, handcrafted locally. That's really where we stand, and everything that we do from production facility, and don't look right now, but is to focus on that, on our brand.
Right.
And when like I say, when we do the rum, we're trying to make the cleanest rum in the world, and that's a balancing act, because rum is by definition probably the dirtiest alcohol, and to make it clean, and flavorful, and to the consumer's expectation, is where we need to focus our marketing efforts on that. With the vodka, the clean fits in easy. It's simple. We're a gold medal vodka with no additives, which in this day and age is, everyone likes to put masking agents in vodka, glycerin, like citric acid type stuff, just plain old sugar, just you name it, people put it in as masking agents. We don't do that, which means you're under a microscope. You've got to be super clean to be smooth. And that's with the in the filtration at the end, how we balance that pH, how we get the carbons that we do use. All that is to make that product as clean as possible without, and allowing the corn to come through, and some vanillas from the charcoal to come through, and to balance that as a great tasting product while being clean.
That's a good deal. And you talked about your innovative ideas, how you guys are using your cleanliness is what you strive for.
Innovation, distilling's been around for how many thousand years now?
Right.
When you're distilling, you're separating product.
Right.
We use basically a fractioning still, where we're looking at basically the boiling point, and that's telling us what we're doing. We couldn't do that with a pot still. It makes it a heck of a lot. It's easier to make clean. With a pot still, you'd have to run it through 10 times to do what we can do in 2 runs.
Nice.
And there, you're not even there.
Right.
And then at that point, you've wasted probably half your product. Pot stills are great for a whiskey, but when you get into separating the good stuff from the bad stuff, they're not very efficient. With the whiskeys, you've got enough flavor components from the barrel that you kind of mask over the dirty stuff. Yeah, and I'm not saying we are, but if we ever did get into a whiskey, that's where our opening would be. We'd still use the flavor components from the barrel, but we wouldn't put the methanols and the amyls in there that leak through now into most products.
Copy. Distribution is becoming an issue throughout the beverage industry.
Yes,
consolidation of distributors. How do you guys handle those issues?
You know my daily problems now. Distribution, and now if you talk to beer guys, distribution's a little bit different in what they're doing. The one thing for beer guys is that some of the small distributors and even large ones have realized that the craft beer segment of the market is profitable and it's growing. They've almost all the small breweries around here, except for Smart Mouth, are run under distribution. And it's not my business, but I think is it Associated that runs them?
I don't know, sir.
Yeah,
I talked to Connors.
Yeah,
I interviewed him last semester.
Yes, sir.
And he indicated, he didn't tell me which distributors he used, but It seems like they're usually only like 1 or 2. Like,
you normally will have one per state.
Right.
All right. With liquor, it's a bit different. And well, it's probably actually you've got your tier 1 products. Mm-hmm. And when you think of that, you think of Jack Daniel's, Jim Beam, Grey Goose, Absolute. That these products they turn the lights on for that distributor. And all of their efforts are going to be focused on those tier 1 products. If they don't focus entirely on the tier 1 products, they could lose them. And then they can't turn the lights on. With their tier 2 and 3 products, the smaller brands, if they lose them, it's not a big deal. If they grow them, it's honestly not that big of a deal. Right. There's almost all the distributor agreements are month to month. That seems good in a way, but it doesn't lend to lasting relationships. It's very hard for us as a smaller brand to go out and have a distributor promote us. They're great at delivering product, but they're not good in brand representation or promotion of smaller brands. Right. That really means that you've got to pay them to do it, and you have to do it yourself, which gets really expensive. When you're going out and promoting a brand or two across the Mid-Atlantic or just in Virginia, it's expensive. Just hotel rooms, advertising, whatever you're going to do, even simple as a tasting, it gets expensive. I'm working on it.
All right, you got to. But even with the new social media, shouldn't that help out just a tad bit? Or has it helped?
I would say somewhat. With social media, I think it's a great way. I think that social media has its time in advertising is waning. Just because our blinders come up once we realize it's advertising. Yeah. Facebook was great when it was you talking to your buddies or checking out some girls, whatever. But when you start seeing it as advertising, what happens is if you're advertising there before, it was probably fairly subtle, and you're even if it's just word of mouth, that's great. But now automatically you think advertising. Your blinders are up. I don't know that most people buy vodka on word of mouth from someone they perceive as an expert, somewhat on packaging at the point of sale. But when you've got a bottle of Blue Ridge on the shelf, and it's right now on sale for $19.95.
Oh, I see that on Facebook.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. You're one of the few. All right. $19.95. All right. You're taking a chance. All right. You're going to spend $20 on a product that, well, I can guarantee you, because it's 40% alcohol by volume, that it'll get you drunk. Right. We know that, but you don't know what it smells like. You don't know what it tastes like. You don't know how smooth it is. And you've got 100 other bottles up there that you can choose from. That's difficult. Because you have to be willing to take that chance, that leap of faith, just by presentation alone. Now, if somebody told you it's a great product, or you had it at a friend's house, that's where we do really well. We do really well at the on tastings at the stores, at different events where people can try the product. So that's a difficulty.
So how do you get that bottle in the local bars and clubs and restaurants?
Well, the distributor is supposed to go out and show the bottle to the restaurant owner, and he tries it and goes, "Wow, that's local. That's a fantastic product."
What distributor is that?
Wow. A year ago, I had to part ways with a distributor. My local rep had been on board for over a year and had not once presented the product.
Wow.
I would say he was focused on his tier one account, on his tier one beverages, and didn't really care about the local guy.
Right. It's disheartening.
Yeah, well, you know, and it's the thing that sucks is I was painted for a year.
Right.
and that's pretty much the name of the game. You've got to pay the guys, and it's normally in the liquor. It's 8 to 10% of your revenues go to pay for distribution on the rep side. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go to actual physical distribution outside of Virginia, where they're delivering it to restaurants and so forth, that's usually another 25%.
Big chunk.
They're making more money than I am. I'll put it that way.
That's a big chunk.
And they're not doing nearly as much work.
Well, that's the game.
Yeah, they're pretty good at it too. I mean, they know they're not working that hard. They focused their energy on tier one. I mean, we talked about that.
Right.
And you can't blame them, but that means you have to use other avenues.
Right.
Like I said, with social media, it sounds great, but there's not a scratch and sniff with social media. If you've got brand ambassadors, guys that if you get on Facebook and say, man, I went to this distillery, they had the best product, that is awesome.
Right.
That helps.
Right.
But for me to go out and advertise on social media, for me to advertise in print media, we don't get much bang for our buck. Where the focus of our energies would be getting, and I don't want to say brand ambassadors to an extent. We want people to talk about us.
Right.
We want to be available for tastings and locations. An ABC store is not ideal because it's not a fun memory going to the ABC store.
Right. In and out.
And a lot of that, I remember there was a vodka called Pink. They didn't make it, but their whole shtick was they would go into strip bars and they would have tastings in strip bars. No, that's not a bad idea, except the problem was it's pink vodka, they're appealing to women, and they're selling it in a strip bar where there's a bunch of guys.
Right.
That was the fault.
Right.
But the premise of, you're in a spot where people are happy, it's fun, you're trying to drink, oh yeah, that was awesome.
Right.
It reminds me of boobs.
Right. And every time they go to the strip bar, hey, let me get that.
Well, I'm not getting the pink. I'm not getting the sparkling pink vodka. It's not going to happen.
Right.
They were halfway there, but they forgot who their target market was.
And that's a big problem.
Because, and then I guess if your target market was the strippers themselves, well, that's probably a great spot, but for most women I know, they'll like to hang out with strippers.
Right.
So I'm assuming that they might have controlled that market.
Got it backwards.
But apparently it wasn't a big enough market. But that's the kind of thing. We do a lot with Wounded Wear, Navy SEAL Foundation, and getting in those events. While you go to a Wounded Wear event, it's seeing some guy banged up. He got his his arm blown off his legs. It's not happy, but that's kind of a fine line for us. Mm-hmm. We do that because we want to support those guys.
Right.
But we also need to get out more proactively for tasting events around, mm-hmm. At the bars and restaurants.
Copy. Where do you envision yourself in 5 years? Or not even 5, or just in the future?
What we need to do is build our company more around the brand. Mm-hmm. We need to get, we started out as gold medal product, handcrafted in Virginia, and our first sales pitch is look how clean we are. That's where our focus has been, and we need to take that and transition it more throughout the company, and starting in production, we're looking at facilities now where we can be cleaner, in new production equipment where we can be even cleaner, and a little bit bigger. That's a big focus of us.
That's a good
And,
deal.
and on the other side of our tagline, we want to focus. It's going to be hard with the rum because nobody's throwing sugar cane around here. But especially with the vodka, to use more local products, so we can tie that in. So in the marketplace, I don't see us really as changing much. Hopefully to get bigger, obviously that's our goal.
Right.
But to really take what we've done and grow that, to really stay close to our core competencies and our mission is.
That's always a good deal.
Yeah.
People always, you get a little bit bigger, but they start changing who they are.
Yeah, we're not. We can't say that we're for everybody. I think we've got because we're clean products. We're pretty dang on palatable. Nobody's gonna go taste a sip of Blue Ridge and go, "Ooh, that's horrible."
Right.
Because we don't use masking agents. Like Grey Goose is using liquor stuff. Some people like Grey Goose. Some people think it's the best thing they've ever had, and then others are like, ew.
Right. Just because of the name, it's a marketing.
Well, yeah, a lot of it. But even in a blind taste test,
right.
Different people have different taste profiles. And so I'm not saying we're trying to be vanilla, but we're trying to just be clean.
Right.
That's our goal.
Right.
That's our brand.
And the last question I have is, like I said, we are inspiring entrepreneurs. What advice would you give us if you was talking to us as a class?
I would say brand.
Good deal. Good deal.
That's unbelievable, and it's easy. It's easy to get caught up in the minutia and worrying about different production techniques. But when you have that overriding, if you know what your brand is and that's driving you, that the answer becomes much more obvious. If somebody asks me to be in a print ad or whatever, does it further that goal of being clean? Gold medal clean product, handcrafted in Virginia. If it doesn't do it, the answer's pretty easy. If it does, print ad, we've had second. It's one of those things, you're just throwing stuff up against a wall. But when we're looking for a new facility, that's our goal. And so when you see it, you're gonna know, boom, that's it. I haven't seen it yet.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that in marketing, it's obviously changed a whole lot since I was a young whippersnapper and looking at in marketing in college.
Right.
But I think when I say brand, it's really it's that image. You can't you can. There's always going to be somebody that can do it cheaper. You cannot compete on price. You've got to be in the market. You don't want to be overpriced. But I'll give you an example. We got a new distributor last year, and where price point was our original price point was $22.45 at the ABC in Virginia. And you ask me why, and I'll say that's where Absolute was. And I thought that's kind of our competition. We're not trying to be Grey Goose. I think our quality is beyond, but that's not the image that we're going for. So we're at $21.90 starting out. That price point, the ABC increased their price so their markup. So our new price point became $22.45, which is fine. We operated there we've been around for 7 years. And never really thought much about changing the price. When we went through a new distributor, he was a wine guy, and he said, the price, you're in the market of 20 to 25 or 24.95 vodka, that mid price point. You're wasting money if you're leaving money on the table if you're not at the higher end of that price range. So he said, move it to $24.90, you'll make more money, right? Well, what happened? Sales fell off 40%.
Wow.
Wow. From basically we raised
$2.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Ouch.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, that one hurt.
Right.
No, you don't expect that.
You don't.
The customer was more than willing to pay $22.45. They were accustomed to paying $22.45. But what happened at that marketplace decision where suddenly 40% say, no, I'm not going to make that purchase for that extra, couple bucks.
Right.
And unfortunately, the state's getting half of that. Yeah, it works out where I'll get about 47% of the sale price. So if more or less, if I'm selling it for $20, I get a little less than 10. And then before I sell it, I've got to pay the federal excise tax, which is $2.14 for this bottle. So I've got some costs.
Yes,
and that's
overhead is crazy.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to do moonshine, but you start thinking about it.
Well, $2.14 is a lot better than prison.
Right? Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And they're pretty good about it. The TTB, which is the old ATF, they'll come in every 5 years and make sure you're on the up and up. And the ABC comes in once a year and just sniffs around. But if they have any inkling that you're doing anything untoward, they will be going through your dumpster. They have unlimited resources that you don't have. And to get on the wrong side of that, it ain't worth it.
That is true.
It ain't worth it.
That is true.
Because there is somebody whose job is to investigate somebody that's doing something wrong. And I don't want to be on that guy's list.
Right. You're right about that. You're right about that.
Because he's getting paid more than I am.
And he's getting paid to find out something.
Yeah, and he's got a whole lot of bankroll behind him in Uncle Sam.
Yes, sir.
Whatever it takes.
Yes, sir.
Whatever it takes.
That's good.
You need a chopper, we got a chopper.
Right. You need a team, we got how many people you need, so that's a good deal.
Yeah. So that might be a good question for you is how did sales fall off 40% from $22.45 to $24.90? Yeah, and I only got $1 of that. The state got the rest.
Right.
So what we did is this quarter we went back down to $19.95, which was our normal sale price. We're going to go back up. Well, maybe I'll take some advice from you and your class, but our thinking was to go back to our original price point at $21.90, $22.45, somewhere in that range. And definitely we need to coddle or smooth over the price point before we raise it again. I know there's some different ways, like we can raise the price point to $22.45, but have it on sale for that first month.
Right.
So people get used to the price, and
no, that's only on sale.
Yeah, it's like, I got to get it now because next month, and then they've got warning.
Right.
And then they're prepared because I don't want to lose 40% of my customers again.
I know that was a gut blow.
That one hurt. That one hurt. Now, of course, we were making a little extra, and gross profit didn't take nearly the hit.
That ain't bad.
But I'd rather have the customers.
Yep.
Yes.
Good deal. Yeah, I'm glad you stopped listening to that distributor.
Yeah, I listened to him with a grain of salt as opposed to undying attention at this point.
Right.
He's got some great points, but that one he dropped the ball on.
Right.
He's done well in a lot of markets, but that one.
Yeah. $2 difference, 40%.
That's a hell of a lot of demand elasticity or price elasticity there.
So, and like I said, thank you for giving me the time. Like I said, I know you're a busy man.
Oh,
And,
shoot. You got me on the perfect time, actually. You can see my attire. I'm going to do some emails, and I've got to go. I'm actually going to look at some spots.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good day.
Okay, so thank you. I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm going to post this, and I want you to view it when you get a chance. I'm going to do some unique stuff to it, and let my class listen to our interview. So thank you, sir.
Cool.
And that's it.